Well, today's project is sorting out the tail lights and the trailer lights on these bad girls. Let's see what we can do. Well, it's a lot easier to see with the bed removed, so let's take a look at what we got here. Coming back from the cab, we got this big ass bundle of wire. That single blue wire you see next to it, that's the trailer brakes. That one's obvious, we don't have to do too much with that. And then coming down to this pile of junk, we got all kinds of interesting stuff. No shortage of surprises, like always. From the factory, it comes with this style connector. These seem to have a love-hate relationship. You either love them or you hate them. I think more people hate them than love them. But these will get you by for 5 to 10 years under ideal circumstances. If you're on the East Coast where they salt the roads, these don't last very long. But out here, it's an easy 5 years, maybe 10 years under ideal circumstances, before they totally crap out. We got to do away with most all of this. We're going to mount this little junction box down here onto the frame rail, and we're going to put this entire cluster of you know what inside the junction box. We'll clean all this up and make it a lot more reliable. As ugly as this is, most of it is still factory. It comes back in the main factory bundle to these factory connectors to this factory Y, and then it Y's off to your left tail light and your right tail light with these two right here. Well, we got our box mounted. The last box was color coded. They were painted yellow, brown. This one's not painted, but they are labeled down in here. If you get in there real close and look, you can see they are labeled. Our harness comes back from the cab. We'll crimp in the terminals. We'll hook each terminal up to the right spot. Still has a lot of the factory harness connections up here. I bought this truck new in 07 with 0 miles from the dealer. They buy these as a cabin chassis and then they put the harsh hoist on. This could be for the ambulance edition. This is where you'd hook up your top lights for your ambulance. There's a bunch of stuff that can couple onto these things. And then further down the line is where the dealer hooks up. This is what the dealer did using those clip-on wire connectors. Clips on, goes to your brake light isolator, and right to your trailer plug. There's not much left here. All this needs to go. We're going to take out all this crap and go directly into our box. Out of our box to the left light, right light, and then out of our box to the trailer light receptacle. So we'll have one in, a left side out, a right side out, and a trailer side out. Well, here's what we got coming from the cab. We got these 6 small gauge wires. Then we got 1 gauge bigger black wire with the silver stripe. And then to this other weird harness here, we have a little bit bigger red and yellow wire. This is closer to a 14 gauge. Then this big black wire, that's about a 12 gauge. And then back to this small red with a double silver stripe. That's the one they pulled the hot for the trailer receptacle. You can see they connected on right there with a clip-on wire connector. I'm assuming this bigger harness would be relay controlled. It's got a much bigger wire. Both of these are much larger than the tail lights and brake lights. Well, here's step 1. Main harness coming in through the grommet into the box. Blue is trailer brakes, brown is tail, green is right turn, red is stop, yellow is left turn, purple is reverse, white is ground. The only thing we're missing is the black terminal, an 8th terminal, and that would be your auxiliary power post, your 12-volt power. There's no need to hook up to the trailer brake post here. The trailer brake comes from the control unit and is going to go all the way through to the plug. There's 0 reason to stop here unless the wire came through this harness. Even then you can continue on through. You wouldn't have to stop at the post. So this blue terminal, the trailer brake post, won't be used. That completely eliminates this factory plug here. Remember, all those clip connectors were clipped onto these wires right here. They were all in bad shape and falling apart. I doubt half of them even worked. So this box eliminates this terminal here. Kind of strange, but this one wire coming in is your tail and your license plate light. It splits right here into 2 wires, and both terminals are labeled in the wiring diagram. One is tail, one is license plate light, even though it feeds off the same wire. And that leaves us with these 4 remaining wires that went to this factory terminal here. This is the one that had that real bad clip connector. It's very obsolete. The big black is a ground. The red and yellow is a dome light, believe it or not. I'll explain later. One of these is a dedicated running light. Different from the tail lights, it's the running lights that goes on the body of the truck. It comes from a different source than the tail lights. So if you pinched a wire up here and threw out your running lights, you're not going to kill your tail lights. The other is a 12-volt hot that went to this terminal. We're going to utilize the 12-volt hot to continue onto our trailer plug. So that was ground, dome light, running light, and 12 volt. 3 of the 4 went to this plug. The 4th is the running light. Step 2 is to eliminate this mess. This is the other end of that connector. After it leaves the connector, it forks into two. That's your left taillight assembly and your right taillight assembly. That's why it splits into two. One hits left, one hits right. One plugs into your left, one plugs into your right. That means each run's going to have a turn signal, a tail light, a brake light, a reverse light, and a ground wire. So each one's going to have 5 wires running to it. Well, when I pulled back the sheathing, I found about 5 more connectors through here. So this thing was likely full of problems. This is going to save us a lot of headaches. Well, we made some progress, and here's what we have. Main harness coming into the top. Left turn signal assembly comes into the top, comes out this top grommet, and over to the left tail light. The right side turn signal assembly comes in down here at the bottom, comes out this one to the right turn signal. We're ready for our tail light converter. 5 wires coming in, 4 wires coming out. We're going to bring those 5 wires in through this bottom grommet. We're going to hook up the 5 wires, and then we'll go out with 4 wires to our trailer plug. 4 wires coming out are left, right, tail, and ground. We're going to need to run our blue wire, our trailer brakes, all the way through and hit our plug. Well, we're ready for the trailer light receptacle. It's a Hopkins brand, looks decent. Definitely has some obsolescence engineered into it. That little plastic flap right there is the only thing holding it together. Once that breaks, you're completely open to the elements. The only thing holding it in is the right side plastic and the left side plastic. See that little bit of plastic on the right? As soon as that snaps, you're back open to the elements. It's probably why they give you all this. I suppose that's why they give you 2 packets instead of just 1. All of these should give you an easy to follow diagram. This one's even easier because it shows the terminals and the screws. Real easy to tell which way you're looking at it. You're looking at it just like that, with the terminals and screws. If you look, you can see the left turn is on the right side. That means over here, left turn is this right hand terminal. This is looking at it from the truck point of view. When you flip it over, now that terminal is switched. Now that left terminal as you see it is the left turn signal, because we're looking at it from the trailer's point of view. When you look at it from the truck's point of view, the right terminal is the left turn, but from the trailer's point of view, now the left terminal is the left turn. So you do got to know which way you're looking at it. Here they made it easy because they show you the terminals. Kind of idiot proof. Here's a real old one, and they didn't really tell you. They didn't tell you to look at it from a truck's point of view. They don't show the terminals. So if you had a male-female combination and this is all you had, you could get these completely backwards, 180 degrees off of each other. So you got to know which end you're looking at, the truck end or the trailer end. Well, let's take a look at what we got. The blue trailer brake wire is a single wire all the way from the brake controller, runs all the way down alongside the main wires. That's a dealer option. The dealer puts on the dump, and the dealer does the brake control unit, lights, and trailer light receptacle. All that's from the dealer. This long zip tie here, that's from the dealer. I bought 2 of these brand new back in '07, and this basic setup gave me 10 good years. So with a single wire coming all the way, I just kept it a single wire. I kept the single blue going all the way through, all the way down to the trailer light plug. And in the box we have a lot of goodies. Look at all those goodies. Notice the blue terminal, the trailer brake terminal, is empty. This saves confusion in the future. Someone should see the trailer brake terminal, the blue terminal is empty, see the blue wire, and immediately know what's going on. No trailer brakes to the box. A lot of these have 4 wires. The main coming in, tail lights to the left, tail lights to the right, and tail lights to the trailer. So a lot of these have 4. Of course the blinkers only have 3. 1 in, 1 side blinker, and trailer. So the blinkers only have 3, but most else has 4. The 2 things that weren't used, there's an additional black ground and this dome light wire. That was for that factory body plug. The running lights, we don't have a running light terminal, we just have a tail light terminal. It wire nuts in and then right back out. The running lights have always been a single wire running down the frame, clipped on with these little duckbill clamps. You can see it gives it freedom. Hooked up with a real basic connector. This is still the dealer's work here. This is all original dealer work. Coupled back in and ran back to our box. The tail lights and the running lights are 2 different sources, 2 different fuses. A lot of people confuse that and they hook the running lights up to the tail lights, or they combine the 2 inputs, thinking there's 2 tail light inputs, but there's actually a tail light and a running light. The running light is specific for the body. when you end up clipping this wire, shorting this wire out, you just throw your running lights out. You don't throw your tail lights out. The one additional is the 12 volt. That's our power source. The power source is wire nutted in and runs down our trailer light harness. The converter had 5 connections here, so we have 5 connections into the converter and then 4 wires out. Here's the converter zip tied to the frame. 5 wires in, 4 wires out. Pigtails up and around and down to the trailer light harness. There's the 2 other wires, the trailer brake wire, and then that's our 12 volt wire, our hot wire. Those both run to the trailer light connector. So that's 6 wires running there. The only one it doesn't have is the reverse. You could hook up to the purple terminal, the reverse light terminal, and run your 7th wire down, and that would be your reverse wire. And then you would have all 7 terminals filled up. I don't run any trailers at night, so reverse lights on the trailers don't really help me much. But I seen it at the boat dock once and it was impressive. Guy flipped it in reverse and the whole boat lit up. Backed it down into the water, you could see the fish down in there. We were just coming in from night fishing about midnight and it was something to see. It was impressive. And he knew it too. He put on a show just for us. So reverse lights on your trailer are definitely pretty cool, but if you're not working at night, you don't really need them. You only need them if you're going fishing. And then back to our terminal block. It all seals up, screws in, closes out nice, and leaves us with a pretty dang nice finish. There's still a few of these factory connectors in here, and those things are indeed original, but for now everything seems to be working fine. Well, let's take a look at what the book has to say. Here's the rear body harness. This is the connector I did away with. That's this guy right here. This is coming from the truck side. Here's the tail light signal where it forks off into the license plate light. Tail light, license plate, coming from the same source. You can see how bad the other side was. This one's barely hanging on by 1 thread, and all the other ones are just beat to hell. About your only option is to replace this. Here we got our left turn, the tail lights. You can see the tail lights and the license plate lights are the same wire. Reverse lights. Here's your brake lights or your stop lights. Back to your license plate light, same as the tail light. Black wire is your ground, and then your right turn signal. This is what the tail light converter is doing. The truck comes with a separate signal for the brake lights, and the tail light converter pulls that out and combines it to your turn signals for your trailer light receptacle. Most tail lights don't use this stop light. It's already built into the left turn and right turn. Just depends on how the signal is sent. It makes us jump around a little bit. This is page 8335. Here's the manufacturer's connection we eliminated. It shows it right here on the diagram. They give you the top part so you can make your own waterproof connection and continue the harness to whatever you're going to run. This runs a hot wire straight from the power source and another lead coming from the dome light relay. Some countries run school buses and ambulance and have bodies or even trailers that tow passengers. So that's what this is for. When the dome light comes on, you can turn the dome light onto your bus or your ambulance or whatever type of passenger vehicle you have. There's just about every type of body for this thing in other countries. Here's some good info. The one thing this diagram doesn't show here is that the running lights are separate from the tail lights. We can learn that from this diagram. We have our tail lights, we have our DRL lights, and down here we have our marker lights. Different power source, different fuse. Fuse 19 runs markers, fuse 7 runs tail lights. A lot of people confuse these two. The marker lights are not the tail lights. Even though you turn on one switch, you turn on either the headlight or the parking light switch, the tail lights come on, and also the marker lights. There is not a separate switch for the marker lights. One switch activates both, but they come from different power sources. So you got to know that. If you're chasing down no power to your marker lights or your running lights, you need to understand that's separate from the tail lights. You're looking for a separate fuse. Dome light and rear dome light, you can see both are associated with the manufacturer's connection. And this dome light, manufacturer's connection, that's this guy. That's the dome light wire. And down here, power source number 2, manufacturer's connection. This is where the dealer pulled power off of for the trailer light receptacle. That's the power that they used. And that's a dealer option. That's not a factory option. The dealer put the body on and the dealer hooked up to here. So you could call this a funky dealer issue, not a factory issue, as it's the dealer's idea to connect to here. Here's the manufacturer's connection. They give you 2 of them. There's a front and a rear. The front one's right behind the body and the rear one's back at the tail lights. Comes from power source 2, fuse 23. Here's our two manufacturers' connection, front and rear, and if you can see it, it tells you cab light, power source, and markers. So if you had an ambulance or a school bus, the marker lights, the running lights would illuminate, plus the dome light, and then the dedicated running light over here, the marker lights, coming off the marker light relay with a marker light fuse, different from the tail light. This shows the rear body harness. That's the one we removed back there. We replaced it with a junction box. Here's our relays. B22 is the tail light relay. J20 is the marker light relay. That's your running lights. Here's a power distribution showing our power sources, and again our marker lights. The power distribution for our two power sources. Power source 1 is your interior power source, like your cigarette lighter thing. Another fuse layout, tail lights, brake lights, headlights, marker lights, power source, your turn signals. Well, just in case you needed one more lesson on what exactly the tail light converter does, here you go. It all starts with the amber tail light. If you have the amber tail light, you need a tail light converter. The classic tail light doesn't require the tail light converter. It is both your blinker and your brake light, and with a dual filament bulb, it's also your tail light. The signal for your blinker and the signal for your brake light come down the same wire. It just depends on how the signal's sent. The flashing signal for your blinker takes priority over a solid signal for your brake light. So when you hit your brakes, they both light up. When you hit your blinker, one of them starts flashing. The flashing signal will take priority over the brake light signal. With an amber light, they're independent of each other. You have a dedicated brake light and a dedicated turn signal light. Whereas on your trailer, you're set up like this. And that's why you'll need a converter. The converter has a series of diodes in here to take these two signals and combine them into one. On the input side, you have 5 wires. You have your left and right turn signal plus your brakes or your stop light. Coming out of the converter, you only have 4 wires. You just have a left and a right. You no longer have your stop signal. It's converted into the blinkers. So whenever you see the amber tail light, you know you have a converter, or you know one will be required. Whenever you have the classic tail light set up, you know you won't need a converter. So coming into the converter is the ground, the tail light, left blinker, stop lights, and right blinker. Coming out of the converter is ground, tail, left turn, and right turn. Your stop wire has been converted into the turn signals. It still receives signal in, but it's converted down the wire to your turn signals. You can see it only says 2.1 amps. They do make these as powered converters also, where 12 volt power goes in and it amplifies the signals out. Big trailers, long trailers, double trailers will use a powered tail light converter. The fuse panel is inside the glove box. They're decently labeled. The kicker is the power source fuse. It's behind the glove box. Take the glove box out, and back in there is your power source fuse, that 10 amp. I had several crews that used to run this truck, and somebody blew a fuse and stuck a 20 amp in that very top one. And it was completely melted in there. It almost melted the whole little fuse holder. I was barely able to get the 20 amp fuse out without destroying the whole thing. So knowing that there's only 10 amps of power available to the trailer plug brings us to one more topic. If you're going to tow something that draws current like a dump trailer, you got to put a circuit breaker on here. You can see instead of a fuse I have a circuit breaker. This needs to be a 10 amp circuit breaker to match your power supply. If you don't have the circuit breaker on there, as soon as you hit the switch, you're going to pull too much current through that wire and blow that fuse. You either got to put this on the truck side or on your trailer side, but one way or another you got to have a circuit breaker on here. As soon as this battery draws down a little bit, it'll pull a lot of current out of that wire. That means this isn't going to run the dump trailer. The circuit breaker won't run the dump, but it will provide enough current to charge the battery while you're traveling and driving around. And then when you do hit that dump, it's not going to overload this and blow the fuse, either on the truck side or on the trailer side. So remember the circuit breaker.